This afternoon we're going to discuss about the future vision this year for XR, which is a great opportunity actually. If you've stuck around, some of you have for the whole afternoon, so bless you, because I think the reward is that we've got a chance to really, as a community of developers, to really think about what we're doing, reflect on the projects that we're working on, and look at some of the new opportunities that we've seen. Holoride is on our lips. Interesting. That might not have been at the beginning of the day, so that's very exciting. So I'm going to let go of the mic briefly and let everybody just introduce themselves.
I've got a mic, I think.
Oh, you've got your mic up. Is everybody mic'd up?
No,
yeah. Tim.
What was that word you just said? Holoride.
Holoride.
Holoride. Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
in the car. In-car XR. It rhymes. In-car XR.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah.
So we'll kick that one around this afternoon.
Nice. Yeah, we're not doing any of that. So yeah, my name's Jake Manion. I'm from a studio called Internet of Elephants, previously at Aardman Animations down in Bristol, in their gaming division. We're fairly unique in that we're based in Nairobi, Kenya, and we're a game studio where all of our products are based on wildlife science and data, and everything we do is designed to create behavior change in our players for the benefit of wildlife and the planet.
Fantastic, awesome. Hi, for those of you who weren't around earlier, my name's Alex. I'm head of studio for Niantic London. Niantic is augmented reality games developer, most famous for Pokemon Go. Now creating the Niantic real-world platform, which is going to empower a new generation of developers to make geolocated augmented reality games. Niantic London is a new division formed last year from the acquisition of my games company, Sensible Object.
And hi everybody, my name's Tim. So I run a VR, AR development studio in the Midlands called VR Simulation. We've got a small team of 20 developers, game programmers, but we specialise in enterprise applications. So we work for, we do a lot of training application using XR for people like the UK Police Force. We do a lot of work with rail, big engineering companies like Rolls-Royce, clients of ours. So we're a bit specialist on the enterprise side more than anything else.
Fantastic. No, you can hold on to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So we've all got a mic.
Excellent.
So we'll be well behaved there, I'm sure. So I've just realised I have spent the whole afternoon talking to everybody, and I haven't introduced myself. If you don't know who I am, I'm Marcus Pullen. I'm the CEO of Blue Donut Studios, and we develop games, software applications, and we work with people like the NHS and WPP and Kantar. So we're all very invested as people in virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, and beyond. And as I said earlier on, we're going to look at, do some crystal ball gazing, as we love to do here at PG Connect XR, for the year ahead. But first of all, I want to look back, and I want to ask you, gentlemen, what were your highlights of 2019 in terms of XR?
Don't start with me. I've got to think about that one.
Okay, Tim.
Cool. Okay, go for it.
Okay, I mean, my highlight actually was an area that we don't do a lot in, which is sport, but we managed to get a couple of contracts with sports in XR. So one was golf and the other was football. And this is training product. This isn't entertainment pure for fun. It's actually using AR, VR, mixed reality as a tool to train professionals. And that was great fun. So we've developed an application to train proper golf pros using XR. We've just completed a project for Aston Villa. Not that it's working, but anyway.
Any day now.
Any day. But it's we helped, and it's used in our academy to train youngsters in different. So it's been great.
I think a big Niantic highlight for last year was shipping a multiplayer AR feature inside of Pokemon Go. So it's the first time that the ability to create a shared AR experience where multiple people can be looking at the scene through different phones. In this case, there's this new buddy feature where you can assign one of your Pokemon to be your buddy. It pops up in AR, you can feed them, and interact with them in different ways, and then once you've done that each day, they'll follow you around the screen and help you out in various tasks. And now you can have multiple people, each with their own phone, can create a shared experience where you're all looking at those same, your buddy and other players' buddies taking photos, doing little bits of interaction. And that's sounds like, it's one of those things that sounds relatively modest as an advance, but in terms of the kind of underlying investment in research and seeing that through to it being part of the platform, that's a really significant development that we're excited about.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about one of our products, but it's not yet launched, so I better not. We'll talk about that in a minute. I think it was actually hearing about Valve and Half-Life.
Yeah.
You know, that was actually, it's not done yet, is it? But that was the thing that could actually push.
Well, and the sort of industry gossip is that it's been a big needle mover in terms of unit sales, that suddenly like a lot of device hardware is selling out. And
yeah, so many of the issues are around reach and penetration and everything. And just to have a really flagship game that you can only play VR is just, going to actually get people using this stuff.
So would you say it's fair to say that really by the end of last year, it really felt that the market was hardening up, that there was an appetite that has gone beyond the fad phase? Yeah?
Well, you're seeing a lot of different trends, right? There's been a lot of rumours this year around Apple AR glasses, various articles alluding to various different things. Those kinds of rumours sort of cluster and aggregate, and you wonder where that's going to head. But it's significant that those kind of things are out there, because the launch of that hardware is going to be really significant for the AR and XR sectors. I think there's a lot of data points that support the fact that this is still an evolving and growing market with more and more solid opportunities for games developers to get involved.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot more development kits around there for AR and VR that are working better. The hardware's getting better. The phones, if we looked at the mobile phone sector, in terms of the outward functionality, it's interesting, the mobile phone markets feel that they're getting quite slow, but yet actually the hardware's underneath it is becoming more and more reliable, and that's exactly what we're looking for, better frame rates. And talk about mobile then, would you see 5G as being a potential needle shover as well, like we've talked about Valve? Is that a possibility?
I think in our area it is. So we've got a 5G rollout in the Midlands as a test bed. So we're doing a bit of work with the guys there. They're very keen on using mobile in terms of enterprise training and for engineering. So there's this big push to track people, goods, services, all using 5G. So you're starting to see some case studies, but it's early days. I think really the 5G, or the government are really looking for sort of case studies to show the benefits of 5G, so that's where they're putting the money at the moment. So it's pilots, it's case studies, it's not adoption as yet. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, price-wise, really. Yeah,
obviously, there's a lot of investment coming in from governments, from telecommunications companies. 5G, is a very important thing, and we know from the history of the video gaming space that anything that increases networking capabilities and reduces latency has a knock-on effect in terms of the kinds of games and the kinds of experiences that are available and possible. So yeah, of course, it's going to be a huge deal for the XR sector. It's going to, hardware is one end, connectivity is another end. And as we saw with broadband adoption and the increase in internet speeds, what that did for, we go back far enough, a company like YouTube, right, which was predicated on the availability of bandwidth in order to be able to download video. It's only sort of 10, 12 years ago that wasn't the case. So project forward again, and of course 5G and increased bandwidth and all the things that it brings with it are going to have an effect.
Yeah, and of course the other thing with enabling faster data speeds is data. So how do you guys see data being an important part of your applications? I mean, Jake, maybe you want to pick that up.
It doesn't really apply to our specific product, but yeah. So this concept of like the AR cloud, right? Is everyone familiar with this? It's like a sort of cloud-based map, like physical map of the world around us. Yeah. So as everyone's going around using their devices to scan because they want to use AR applications, we're gradually building up this cloud of data about the physical world, and that then feeds back into the AR applications because we understand the world better. It's not just about using the camera and the sensors to scan. We're actually, we know that there's a wall there. We know that this is a nice domed ceiling, because it's in the cloud. And that kind of stuff, up and downstream, needs something like 5G to really work. With our stuff. So no, I won't talk about our product. Don't worry. I'll do.
Oh, go on.
Come on,
just a little.
Don't
bit.
be shy.
Yeah. Okay. So look, upcoming title called Wilderverse, which is a game. So it's mobile AR, world scale. Players take on the role of a conservation scientist and is essentially beamed into holographic versions of real wild places, ostensibly in real time. And they take on the role of what it's like to be a conservation scientist. How that translates into gameplay is actually most like a 3D hidden object game in AR. It's world scale. It takes up about the size of this room to play. But that really is the genre that it fits into. And what we do is do that all on one plane. Yeah, so it's just, if you're playing in a flat room or, outside in the park or something, it's really nice. What we really struggle with is, when the world becomes a bit more 3D itself and how we map to that, particularly because we've got animals walking around as well. And, ideally you want them kind of mapping to the stuff that you see around you. So something like, the AR cloud is a real potential for us to make that, really sink in with the world that you live in, rather than it just being a kind of overlay.
And of course, the other thing is, you're trying to understand about the world that both your simulated world and the real world, and so you're processing vast amounts of information. And again, you're talking about the world there. And I want to cover some of the things about technologies that we could use to understand the world we're working with, and things like haptic technology, etc. But I just wanted to talk about...
Can I just jump on from that? There's a couple of things that I might be able to... I mean, the problems that you're describing as an AR developer are a pretty well documented set of challenges that we have for making more realistic AR experiences. And this idea of the AR cloud, which is definitely a thing that a lot of people are striving towards, is a tremendously hard problem to solve. Just to give one example, let's say that you want to create this point cloud environment of a park, like you were saying, where you want to be able to be. I know that my local park is my local park, and I can orient myself among the trees and the different landmarks in that park using my eyes and my memory, my spatial memory, in a very straightforward way. And I don't even think that I'm doing that. I just can, because of the way human brains work. A computer really struggles with that, because a computer is looking at an image and it's trying to compare that image like for like with that sort of AR cloud database. But what if that image was taken from a slightly different angle? What if it was raining or not raining? What if there was snow on the ground? What if there were people or animals or different things in the shot? If you think about the variability of the public space environment in which we live, it's a really interesting and extremely gnarly challenge to try to overcome those sorts of things. And so, I it's a big aspiration, and it's as you understand it more and more, it's a hard engineering problem.
Yeah, Tim, did you want to chip in on that engineering problem?
I think going back to your sort of question at the beginning was about data and data, and for a company like us, data is absolutely key going forward. Gone are the days where we build a standalone AR application that just has a single use. It's about linking that data in an engineering environment or enterprise environment understanding if we're going to use AR to deliver machine operations, or we're going to do predictive analytics to actually identify issues on machines before they occur, help maintenance schedules, help people on the shop floor train at the point of need. All that is data driven, and all that's got to be in the cloud, and we have to use very clever analytics to inform the end users which machine's going to break before it breaks, or what needs looking after and maintaining. And by the way, when they get there, they put a pair of glasses on and up comes the content. That's where AR is taken to the next level commercially. So in answer to your question at the beginning, yeah, absolutely data is key for us.
There's a good example actually of where in some use cases AR, XR, VR is flourishing inside of those kind of B2B environments, because comparatively they're relatively controlled. And the inside of a factory floor does not change so dynamically, and neither do the behaviors of the people inside of it. Yeah. So you kind of compare that with can we make this fun AR world appear in a public park, and you see the kind of interesting kind of different challenges and different affordances for different developers in the AR space.
And of course, the other thing about data is the intelligence that you're picking up in real time. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to Thomas about the idea of game characters, rather than just simple interactions where you push a button or you might pick something up and put it somewhere, that it's actually a space where you can use your body language. And this is the thing I'm finding very interesting, is how we can use non-verbal communication with interacting in the game world. And I think it's also important to remember that the separation between the industrial workplace and the game space, both can learn from each other, can't they? And the game environment creates some very interesting engineering challenges because it doesn't have that structure in terms of players interacting, going out in the world. You've got the animals interacting. There's an incredible opportunity there. And where does that come back to data? It comes back from the idea of being able to collect the behaviourism of the players, the entities in the virtual world, and then I'm going to throw something else in there, which is a bit of a buzzword for journos, I know, machine learning. So how do you see something like machine learning coming into play with those experiences for players and workers with AR and VR?
Anyone?
I'll start. I mean, I think from our point of view, we do a lot of work with the police. So that what you talk about, that gap between gaming and enterprise is closing, and it's closing for the good, because you go back 10 years, I would have really struggled to sell to a police force the idea of using a games engine to deliver training. They would have thought, no, this is gaming, it's not policing. Nowadays, the door's open, and we want to use this technology. So that idea of an avatar could be interrogation. It could be you looking at body language and me trying to work out whether you've committed a crime or not. So suddenly you've got elements of gaming that have been used in enterprise to amazing effect, actually, and that's great. It's I think the gaming world is really bringing it to life. What in terms of a lot of these organisations, training is pretty dull. It's making it far more engaging and interactive, which is wonderful. But the AI for us in examples like that is absolutely key behind that going forward, because again, it's no good delivering a simulation or an application where you go in and the guy says I did it, and the lady says she didn't, and it's the same every time. I've done it once, next person goes in, it's finished. It's got to be dynamic, it's got to use AI. Those avatars have got to change dynamically. The computer's got to know who's using the simulation. It's got to change it depending upon what you're asking, how you interact, and it's got to be different every time a different student goes in. So for us, the AI element, and we've taken on some AI programmers, is equally as important as the whole game programming as well. So, but I know I'm talking from the sort of enterprise side rather than the pure entertainment gaming side, but it's certainly a big part for us.
Yeah, I mean, machine learning is above my pay grade. I'm a game designer. I suppose the one thing I would kind of comment on, this just specifically relates to your example, is if you tried to hold an open-ended conversation with your Alexa, you'll know that true AI conversational dynamics are a ways off. Let's be really generous and say it's a ways off. And I actually have built voice interaction games with my last company, Sensible Object. And it's a very interesting domain if you think about gameplay depth. So if you think about like a roguelike, we all like roguelikes. Roguelikes have unbelievably simple input method, often just up, down, left, right. And within that input method, they're able to create an enormously complex and rich game system, right? And in a way, some of the complexity is easier to kind of get a handle on because the input method is so straightforward. With voice AI and these types of interaction, it's almost inverted. You've got this infinitely sophisticated input method, which is, phenomenal. Let's not, as a use of AI and machine learning, the fact that you can take sort of voice and turn it into speech input and this can be understood at all by a computer is pretty amazing. But then you get to very shallow kind of interactive play experiences. Because there's so many things that might happen, you spend most of your energy and time as developers catching all of the edge cases and not an awful lot of time designing and iterating on a rich, engaging play experience. And those are really interesting, tough, gnarly problems to solve. And the kind of models that you can integrate into speech voice AI right now do not allow for the kind of sophistication that just feels like the baseline of what a player would expect in order to be able to enjoy a game of that experience. Because we're all very used to humans, and humans are incredibly good at understanding meaning, remembering a thing you said 5 minutes ago, remembering a conversation you had 10 years ago, and bringing all of that context and awareness, plus body language and all kinds of things, to the interaction that you're having.
So, as a games designer, do you feel that we're missing an opportunity by not taking advantage of other players in a game when there's so much effort on AI, machine learning being injected into things? There can be a danger that it's forced into something. Or do you feel no, this actually is potentially exciting?
To be clear, I think the applications of machine learning inside of game development are clearly very interesting and exciting. It's just not my field of expertise. In terms of using other players, well, Niantic games revolve around real-world social interactions, and that value is a core component of what we try to bring. As I was talking about earlier on today, you do have to be cautious when you're facilitating any kind of real-world social interaction, because you need to be very mindful, first and foremost, about player safety. So those kinds of criteria are top of mind for game designers, I think. It should be top of mind for game designers who are working in any experience that throws players together in real space.
Yes, it's quite a potentially chaotic environment that you could be dealing with. So, yeah. Jake, did you want to
just on the machine learning thing? Again, it's above me as well. But if you're talking about interpretation of voice, then surely if you've got a fast system plus a nice 5G network to send it all up, process it quickly, send it back, that's actually a big potential for something that's useful. If somebody delivered you a platform that said, we can actually understand what this guy's saying, and then deliver that into a set of actions that you can design around, then that's actually quite beneficial. Likewise, the whole AR cloud thing, understanding the world around us, it is a very complex problem, but it's the kind of complex problem that machine learning might actually help with. For instance, that railing there, that probably exists somewhere else in the world. That's not a unique thing. Yeah. So the understanding of what that thing is probably exists somewhere else, and a clever machine will start to piece all of these kind of Lego pieces together. Anyway, beyond me.
Yeah, but that's great, because you're saying, there's a shared understanding of objects in our real world life that we can then come to play and then be able to build applications by pulling down this information to make it makes it more practical, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does take a decent system on the back end to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would be, but I think it would have its roots in machine learning.
It does sound actually we're starting to design something that might not quite exist yet, but that's cool. So on that note, is that what ahead? What are your highlights? Obviously, you want to get your game ready, so you're going to be very focused on that. But So moving ahead of that, where do you, and also with what you guys are doing, what do you feel is the impact of what you're contributing to as well? That's quite a difficult question to answer, I think, but I've said it now.
Well, like, I mean, so for us, it's all about mainstream. Yeah, so the audience, you know, what we're trying to do with our audience is turn them into conservationists. Yeah, and these are normal people that we're trying to connect with wildlife, connect with like real wildlife experiences, the types of experiences that actually turned real conservationists into who they are, right? Because that's, you know, we believe that that's what the world needs. You know, more people that are looking after it. So this is I'm talking about a mainstream audience. So anything that can break down the barriers between the tech or, you know, the experience and them is great for us. Yeah. So anything that can deal with like the ergonomic problems of mobile AR, right? You know, for our game, you know, you're looking up at great apes walking around trees above you. That's a pain, you know, that really hurts my arm when I'm testing my game.
Do that all the time.
Yeah. You know, we design around that, but still, you know, some kind of hardware that might be able to solve that is really good for us. Likewise, you know, first-time user experience for AR is always tricky when you're dealing with people that have never used AR before. You know, even the basics of like scanning the floor or whatever.
It is a difficult learning curve for some people, isn't it? You have to show them how to hold an iPad or a phone. Yeah. And it's such a unnatural, which is ironic, isn't it? We're creating the technology is very natural, the virtual space. You know, we talk about a hammer. People know what a hammer is, you don't have to tell them what a hammer does. But yet you still have those frustrations with, yes, that environment that we want you to play with or work with, you've got to have this very clunky technology. So what you're talking about, I think it's come across again today, we're about experiences, aren't we, at the end of the day? About creating shared experiences, meaningful experiences, playful experiences. But I'm grabbing my glasses here. What do you think is going to be the big breaker for enabling?
Well, it's going to be an interesting year, right? Like it'll be interesting to see whether any of these rumored instances of hardware have crystallized into a consumer product by January 2021. You know, we'll have been through a big holiday season. Everyone's playing their cards very close to their chest at this stage. I certainly don't know, but it will be interesting to see what happens. And I do think that's something, you know, the first movers into this space with, like, when I say, obviously there are already AR headsets on the market, right? Whether it's HoloLens or Magic Leap or some of the other companies. But what we haven't, no one's cracked yet. None of the big players have moved in. Sort of the Facebook, Apple, Google type players have moved into the space, and it will be very interesting to see whether anyone makes a really substantial play in that space and what that first generation hardware is like and how it performs commercially and what kind of effect that has on the developer ecosystem around that product. You know, some new pieces of hardware like the smartphone generate vast ecosystems of very profitable game development. Others don't, and that's another that's another piece of the puzzle that we'll be looking at. You know, from the perspective of a lot of people in this room who are thinking, well, will there be a developer ecosystem, because that's how we as game makers, you know, we need a big install base and we need viable routes to monetizing the users of that install base, right? That's what you're always looking for. You know, again, just to refer to the voice platform, you know, smart speakers have created a vast install base, but it's very hard / impossible to meaningfully monetize experiences on that platform. So those are, you know, there's a lot still to play out in that space, and I think it will be a very interesting year as we move forward.
And I think coming up to your question of the future, for me it's haptics. You know, I was at CS 2 weeks ago in the US. I had to go with all this wonderful haptic technology. I know it's all R&D, whether it'll be available this year, but you talk about a hammer, there's nothing stopping that being a hammer, or being, as far as your brain is telling you, you're picking up a hammer, because I had to go with these haptic gloves, literally put the gloves on, and then with a VR headset, it started raining. I put my hand out, I could feel every drop of rain on my hand, and that was the quality of some of this haptic tech. We know how it's going to be. It could be very expensive, and it's going to be to begin with, but it's going to come down. But that I had to go with that. Is it the Tesla suit? You know, I had to go one of the. I mean, fascinating technology. And wearable tech now that you've got wonderful opportunities with. So in terms of what I'm interested in this year, it's that haptic technology. So for my industry, I'm not trying to get people to pick up a controller. I want them to pick up the hammer and think it's a hammer and act as if it's a hammer. And that's where we'll succeed.
I think for consumer AR and XR, it will also be about, for this year and potentially for several years, what can be delivered through phones. And I do think that what you were saying about the consumer experience of the what we might call at this stage the traditional AR experience, right, where you are rendering a 3D object into a camera view, which is being delivered real time onto a screen. What innovations will we see at the kind of UX and experiential level that create different modalities where the saw arm problem, the head down in public problem, there's various things there that, like potentially can be innovated on, and that's a really I think that, smartphones are going to outnumber, no matter what happens in the AR glasses space, smartphones are going to be the core delivery mechanism for consumer AR.
Yeah, but the smartphone is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? It's the computer processing power that the people, isn't it? And it's becoming the device is becoming more and more powerful, and the idea of tethering modular may be the thing. Modularization, we talked about the smart glasses connecting to the phone, enabling the phone, trying to get a lot of grunt, CPU grunt into something that's like glasses. Well, Magic Leap. How are they doing? It's a hell of a design challenge, isn't it? They've raised a lot of money, and they've needed a lot of money to get to where they are. Are we going to be seeing more of that kind of technology? We shall see, won't we?
Maybe this is another 5G thing, just to try and keep everything on topic.
Hellfire, yeah.
You can have your nice glasses, 5G connected to some supercomputer in the cloud.
Well,
that does all the processing for you, and it just shows up in your.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with like Google Stadia. How many years are we talking about streaming games for? And then we think, yeah, that's dead. And then Google go, well, let's have a go at it. We'll have a go and see what happens. So, yeah, again, that's the potential of a very high speed, apart from cooking our brains even quicker, a high speed internet. Yeah. I'm going to take this opportunity now to open up the panel to questions. And you guys are probably going to come up with even harder questions than I've asked. Who would like to kick off some questions? I've instantly gone to the chaps at the front. Come on then.
All right then. Do you think motion sickness? Because I don't experience, but I know a lot of people, like my friends do, experience motion sickness. Do you think eventually that will be fixed through software or hardware? Eventually, at some point.
I think it needs to be, doesn't it? I think it's an age thing, actually. I've found younger people don't tend to get it. Older people tend to get more motion sickness. It's something to do with our inner ear. When we get past 40, apparently makes us more susceptible. But then I read a very interesting article in the US last week saying that they have made the way software is developed and designed now, it can minimize motion sickness to a certain extent, which you probably can, but I don't think you're going to get rid of it altogether. It is an issue. A lot of people do a lot of research to try and minimize it, but when trying to sell a product as a training product, like my industry, to thousands of people, if you've got a high significant motion sickness, it is a big issue. AR solves a problem. If no one gets sick with AR, of course.
Has anyone ever solved this, like in the real world, on a boat, for instance? You know what I mean?
That's true.
I mean, this is the other thing about we looked earlier on. Sit here for a moment. Nice to see the front of your faces rather than just the side. We looked at the Hollow Rider. Now, you guys are familiar with the Hollow Rider? So the idea of opening up play spaces and workspaces in unusual areas. The automotive sector, of course, they're looking at electric cars, and they're looking at how electric cars and self-driving technology can change the space, the actual cockpit space of the car, And of course then that's given rise to the idea, well, hellfire, these guys are going to be stuck in the car for 3 or 4 hours. They want to do something. So how do you think that would play out with, again, you've got some serious challenges there, motion sickness, etc. But the idea that you've got the internet, you've got the speed, you've got the data, you've got the hardware potential. What does that make you feel like? Going, hey, we could start building game experiences inside, out of the living room, and out of the casual mobile phone device into the environment of the car.
I suppose AR's done that to a certain extent already, taking gaming out of the living room and outside. I think vehicles are very interesting because it's the driverless cars it's feeding this new element of innovation where people come up with all sorts of ideas and developments. I saw one, that GPS voice, when I was in the US. Instead of telling me to go left or right, it can give me a tour, so it can point out buildings and tell me what I'm looking at. I think there's all sorts of. VR in a car, the motion of the car and the VR might throw me over the edge in terms of your question. We'll have to have a look. But I think it's fascinating, isn't it? With the whole, the glasses side of AR. Magic Leap. I don't know. I went to Magic Leap. They told me wait till Magic Leap 2. And this is the guy's own suggestion to me. He said, so we'll have to see. I mean, there were some very interesting Chinese models in terms of $600 glasses, but they're tethered into a little box, so the PC's in your pocket. It's not all in the headset. That's probably going to be the way it goes. But then that'll eventually go into cars where it'll the head-up displays and looking through monitors and screens, I can imagine. But it's a very fast-paced area at the moment.
I mean, if there is motion sickness in cars still, AR could solve that. If you're actually in a virtual cockpit, although you're really driving this car, maybe that's the way to solve it.
Okay, so what I want to do is we haven't got much time left, so I wanted to. If anybody's got any questions at all there, yeah. Oh, we do have some more questions.
With like VR and AR and XR and all VRs, it's very social and things like that. But do you ever feel like it could go into like competitive gaming, like any type of esports, if we could one day get there? And what would your opinions be on that? Because like Pokemon Go itself is kind of a competitive game. What's the point of it? Do you feel like it could ever evolve into something?
Sure.
Get into esports?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting potential area. I think that kind of if you think about how esports evolved, they evolved from sports, right? Which was the original kind of reality-based competitive experience. And something that maybe got lost in the translation from sports to esports is the kind of human body and the sort of human competitive element being expressed as part of the experience, right? We obviously gained the amazing sophistication of watching League of Legends and all of the kind of cool stuff that's going on there. But you lose something of seeing somebody make a great catch or a great pass or any of those sorts of things and the kind of human storylines that go along with that. So there is, I think, speaking speculatively, some potential in kind of recombining those two things using AR, where you're seeing kind of physical human endeavor and having those human storylines in a different way, but it's also a kind of awesome competitive video game experience. As far as I'm aware, there isn't really any kind of examples of that out there right now. But just from a creative standpoint, it sounds kind of cool.
I once played Tekken VR against somebody else. This was like many, many years ago in Vegas. And, you just put on the headset, you play Tekken, you fight each other.
Were you doing like punching moves?
Yeah.
How are your roundhouse kicks?
Yeah, they were pretty one-dimensional.
Is it like a Wii? As long as you can get your leg like above sort of knee height, then it suddenly does this humongous spinning kick.
Yeah, and this is all tethered as well, so you don't want to be spinning around. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, so with esports, surely there's potential for, virtual reality.
I mean, watching people do stuff in VR hasn't tended to be the most rewarding of experience, has it? one tends to look a bit daft.
But you just look at their avatars instead, and then we're good.
Yeah, so what about the idea then in the living room that, like Angry Birds has tackled, you've got players, you've got a leader with a headset, and then other players sharing experiences. Is that really kind of just like trying to solve a problem, with a stopgap, or are we going to see more casual experiences with VR? Or is VR, you've got to face it, kids, VR is a special, it's your time, you put the headset on and it's a solo experience, or is that not true?
I've had good social experiences with VR. What's the bomb game? Well,
Keep talking and nobody explodes.
Yes,
keep talking.
Brilliant.
It's a lovely game.
Does everyone know this game? You've got... Yeah,
everyone knows this game. That was brilliant. Literally all of you nodded your head there. That was good.
It's just a great example of why a headset works, because you essentially are blindfolded from the rest of the world, and that's part of the mechanic. So yeah.
Still the exception rather than the rule, right? Like I'd say that there's a few of these standout, like co-op or like multiple role VR experiences, but most of what's been successful has been this like solo player, more isolated experience.
But is that driven more just because of the price of headsets? And, it's unlikely to find two mates that have got the same headset.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Is sometimes you've got mixed headsets and they don't want to talk to each other. That can be a bit of a problem still. But it's early days. Okay, last thing to think about is what advice would you give to our gang here about developing in AR or VR or MR?
For us, we use like the bog standard stuff, right? We're using, Unity AR Foundation, which is super easy to get into. The reasons why we use AR to do our stuff is that you can get these really nice kind of visceral experiences that actually would be incredibly expensive if my team had to go ahead and like model these beautifully realistic habitats with animals in them and stuff. That's stupidly expensive, and it's going to get more expensive as people's expectations rise, right? With AR, I'm working with holograms, super low poly, one shader, it's really easy to make, put up a few trees, and suddenly you actually feel like you're there, even though on our side we've done very little. So yeah, my tip is that it's a very good way of creating amazing experiences very cheaply.
I think my advice to devs who are in this space would be twofold. One is, I think, to be creative about avoiding some of what we might call the kind of cliches of AR development, the way it's done, and thinking about different ways to use the phone and the real world and AR platforms to do cool stuff. And the second is just to keep following the Niantic blog, because there's a lot of updates coming out about the Creators Fund and the real world platform, and investment that Niantic's making in research and platforms. So it's a good source of updates and intel about the work that we're doing.
I think my advice is we're in this stage where technology changing so fast, AR, VR. This is the pioneering group. You guys are going to be disruptive. You guys are going to come up with the next ideas. Just keep innovating, keep developing, you'll be surprised what picks up. I was in Wolverhampton and I saw a developing company there. And they had this top game, and all it was a Harry Potter AR. He puts like a cloak on. Have you seen it? Apparently it's a top-selling game for kids at Christmas. The guy pulled $5 million out of that. It's probably a game that took a day to build. So you don't have to overcomplicate it to make an awful lot of money. But I'd certainly say be innovative, be disruptive, because we're at an exciting time.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for spending the time with us this afternoon. And we're going to wrap it up there for today, unless anybody's got any more questions. So Jake, Alex and Tim, big round of applause for sticking around.